I woke up that Saturday morning feeling like I'd finally earned a real day off. After 3 weeks of back-to-back interrogations, court appearances, and mountains of paperwork, I had nothing on my schedule except a garage sale I'd been planning for months. 20 years of living in the same house means you collect a lot of stuff you don't need anymore. Old furniture, kitchen gadgets still in boxes, books I'd never read again, and about 15 different coffee makers because apparently I had a problem. The sun was just coming up when I started dragging tables onto my driveway. It was one of those perfect spring mornings where the air still has that cool bite, but you know it's going to warm up nice. I'd been looking forward to this for weeks, not because I needed the money, but because there's something satisfying about clearing out all that clutter and giving it to people who'd actually use it. I had just finished arranging some old tools on one of the tables when I heard the sharp clicking of heels on pavement. I knew that sound. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that sound. It meant Patricia was on the warpath. Patricia Whitmore had lived 3 houses down for about 5 years, and in that time she'd managed to make herself the most talked-about person on our street. Not in a good way. She was one of those people who seemed to think she was put on this earth to make sure everyone else followed rules that often only existed in her head. She'd somehow gotten herself elected as HOA president 2 years ago. And ever since then, life in our quiet suburban neighborhood had become a lot less quiet. "Excuse me," she called out before she'd even reached my driveway. She was power walking toward me with a clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. "Excuse me, sir." I turned around and gave her a friendly wave. "Morning, Patricia. Beautiful day, isn't it?" She wasn't interested in small talk. She marched right up to the edge of my driveway and stopped, looking at my tables like I'd set up a crime scene. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I glanced at my tables, then back at her. "Having a garage sale. I sent in the application 2 weeks ago, got it approved. Should be good to go." Her mouth formed a tight line. "I have no record of any such application." "Really?" "Because I got a confirmation email from Janet." Janet was the HOA secretary, a sweet retired teacher who actually did her job instead of using it to boss people around. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "I don't care what Janet told you. As HOA president, all applications come through me, and I never approved this." I took a deep breath. It was too early for this kind of drama. "Patricia, I followed all the procedures. I've got the emails, the approval, everything. This is completely legal." "Legal?" She actually laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh that makes you think someone's about to make your life difficult. "You're conducting commercial activity in a residential zone without proper authorization. That's a violation of Section 12, Paragraph 4 of our HOA bylaws. I'd lived here for 2 decades. I'd served on the HOA board myself years ago, back when it was just a group of neighbors trying to keep the streets clean and organize block parties. I knew those bylaws inside and out. Patricia, garage sales are specifically allowed. It's in Section 15. Not without the proper permits," she shot back. A car slowed down on the street. My neighbor from 2 houses over, old Mr. Peterson, rolled down his window. "Hey there. Starting already? I'll be back in 20 minutes after I grab some coffee." "There won't be anything here in 20 minutes, Patricia announced loudly. "This sale is unauthorized and will be shut down immediately." Mr. Peterson looked confused. "But I saw the notice on the community board. It said today at 7. "The notice was posted in error," Patricia said, her voice getting sharper. "Drive along, please." Mr. Peterson gave me a sympathetic look and drove off. I felt my jaw tighten. This was getting ridiculous. "Patricia, I don't know what your problem is, but I'm not shutting down my sale. I have every right to be doing this." She pulled out her phone. "Then I'll have no choice but to call the authorities." "You're trespassing." "Trespassing? On my own property? You're conducting illegal business operations. That's a matter for the police." Part of me wanted to tell her right then and there exactly who she was threatening to call the police on, but another part of me, the part that had learned patience through years of dealing with difficult people, decided to let this play out. Sometimes people need to dig their own holes. "You do what you think you need to do," I said calmly and went back to arranging my stuff. Patricia stood at the end of my driveway like a guard dog. When another neighbor, the young couple from across the street, walked over with their toddler, Patricia actually stepped in front of them. "This sale is not authorized," she declared. "I suggest you turn around." The husband, Greg, looked past her at me. "Seriously?" I shrugged. "I've got all my permits. She's just being difficult." I am not being difficult, Patricia snapped. I am enforcing the rules that keep this neighborhood from becoming a circus. If everyone just decided to set up shop whenever they wanted, where would we be? Greg's wife picked up their toddler. It's just a garage sale, Patricia. People have them all the time. Not without going through the proper channels. Over the next half hour, Patricia managed to turn away at least 6 potential customers. She stood there like she was defending the border, clipboard in hand, explaining to anyone who'd listen that this was an illegal operation. Some people argued with her. Most just left, not wanting to deal with the drama. I kept setting up, staying calm. I'd dealt with hardened criminals who'd made threats I actually had to worry about. Patricia was annoying, but she wasn't dangerous. Just deeply invested in being right about everything. Around 8 o'clock, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. Patricia's face lit up like she'd won the lottery. 2 officers got out, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on a Saturday morning. Someone called about an illegal business operation, the first officer said, glancing at my tables with mild confusion. Patricia rushed over to them before I could say anything. Yes, officers, thank you for coming so quickly. This man, she pointed at me like I was a fugitive, is conducting unauthorized commercial activity in a residential neighborhood. He's been warned multiple times to cease and desist, but he's refused. I believe he may also be trespassing. The second officer, a younger guy who looked fresh out of the academy, walked up my driveway. He glanced at the prices on my items, then at me. Sir, do you live here? I do. For 20 years now, Patricia jumped in again. That's irrelevant. He doesn't have the proper permits to operate a business. The first officer, who had more years on him, looked at Patricia with the kind of tired expression that suggested this wasn't his first time dealing with an overzealous HOA president. Ma'am, it's a garage sale. People are allowed to sell their own belongings. Not without HOA approval. HOA approval doesn't override city ordinances, the officer said patiently. Garage sales are permitted as long as they follow basic guidelines. No blocking sidewalks, reasonable hours, that kind of thing. I could see Patricia's face turning red, but he's attracting traffic to a residential area. He's creating a public disturbance. The younger officer looked around at the quiet street. Besides Patricia's dramatic performance, there wasn't any disturbance happening. That's when the first officer looked at me a little closer. I saw the moment of recognition in his eyes. He'd been at a community safety meeting I'd spoken at 6 months ago. Chief, he said, his eyebrows shooting up. Patricia's head snapped toward me. Chief of what? The officer looked uncomfortable now. Ma'am, this is Chief Detective Rodriguez. He heads the detective division for the entire county. The look on Patricia's face was something I'd remember for a long time. The color drained from Patricia's face for about half a second before she recovered. I'll give her credit for that. Most people would have backed down right then and there, but not Patricia. She straightened her spine and clutched that clipboard even tighter. I don't care if he's the chief of police, the fire department, or the president himself, she said, her voice shaking just a little. The rules apply to everyone equally. That's what makes a civilized society. The younger officer looked like he wanted to sink into the pavement. The senior officer, whose name tag read Wilson, cleared his throat. Ma'am, with all due respect, there's no violation here. The chief has every right to hold a garage sale on his own property. But the HOA bylaws clearly state, HOA bylaws don't supersede city ordinances, Officer Wilson repeated more firmly this time. We can't enforce HOA rules. That's a civil matter between residents and the HOA board. Patricia's face was getting redder by the second. Fine, then I'll handle this through the proper channels. But this isn't over. She turned to me and I swear I could see steam coming out of her ears. You'll be hearing from the HOA board. Expect a formal complaint and a fine. She spun on her heel and marched back toward her house, phone already pressed to her ear. Officer Wilson gave me an apologetic look. Sorry about that, Chief. Didn't know it was you until I got closer. I waved him off. Don't worry about it. You guys were just doing your job. I appreciate you coming out. She's something else, the younger officer muttered. She's actually been causing problems all over the neighborhood. I said, this isn't the first time she's gone after someone over nothing. Wilson nodded knowingly. We've had a few calls from this street over the past year. Usually turns out to be neighbor disputes that aren't actually criminal matters. I'm starting to see a pattern. After the officers left, a few brave neighbors who'd been watching from their windows started coming over. Mr. Peterson came back with his coffee, and immediately grabbed an old fishing rod I'd put out. The young couple, Greg and his wife, returned with apologies. "We didn't want to get involved in whatever that was," Greg said sheepishly. "Smart move," I told him. "No point getting on Patricia's bad side if you don't have to." "Too late for us," his wife laughed. "She sent us a violation notice last month because our garbage cans were visible from the street for 3 hours on a non-collection day. We'd been unloading groceries and forgot to put them away immediately." I shook my head. This was exactly the kind of thing that drove me crazy. HOAs were supposed to maintain property values and organize community stuff, not turn into tiny dictatorships. The garage sale ended up being pretty successful despite Patricia's interference. By noon, I'd sold about half my stuff and had some good conversations with neighbors I usually only waved to. It felt good, normal. Exactly the kind of relaxing Saturday I'd wanted, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Patricia's reaction. It wasn't just annoying neighbor stuff. She'd been too aggressive, too determined to shut me down specifically. In my line of work, you learn to trust your gut when something doesn't add up. That evening, I was boxing up the unsold items when my neighbor from next door, Tom, came over with a beer for each of us. Tom was a retired accountant who'd lived on this street even longer than I had. "That was quite a show this morning," he said, handing me the cold bottle. "Patricia being Patricia," I said. "Yeah, but it's getting worse." Tom took a long drink and looked uncomfortable. "She came after me and Linda last month. Said our front yard plants were too tall and violated some landscaping code I'd never heard of. Made us pay a $200 fine. $200? For plants? That's what I said. But she showed us this bylaw that apparently got passed at some meeting we didn't even know about. Only about 5 people showed up to vote on it." He shook his head. "The weird thing is, right after that, Linda ran into Patricia's sister at the grocery store. She's a real estate agent. Started asking all these questions about whether we'd ever thought about selling our house. Something clicked in my mind. Her sister's in real estate? Yeah, Brenda something. Works for that big agency downtown. She's got her face on bus benches all over town." After Tom left, I sat on my front steps thinking, a pushy HOA president with a real estate agent sister. Complaints and fines targeting specific homeowners. It could be nothing. People have relatives in all kinds of businesses. But my detective brain was already connecting dots that might not even be there. Monday morning, I got to the office early. I told myself I was just being thorough, just checking something that was probably nothing. But I pulled up property records for my neighborhood anyway. Public information, all completely legal to access. What I found was interesting. In the past 2 years, 6 houses on our street had sold. 3 of them had been listed by Patricia's sister, Brenda Whitmore Chen. That alone wasn't suspicious. Local real estate agents often work in specific neighborhoods. But then I looked at the pattern. Each of those 3 houses had received multiple HOA violations in the months before being listed. The complaints were all documented in HOA meeting minutes, which were also public record. Noise violations, landscaping issues, parking problems. The kind of stuff that could make a neighborhood seem problematic if you were a potential buyer looking at the area. And each of those houses had sold for below market value. Not by a lot, maybe 5 to 10% less than comparable homes on nearby streets. Then within a year, they'd been resold for significantly more. I leaned back in my chair. It could still be coincidence. Maybe those homeowners really did have more problems. Maybe the market just worked out that way. But I'd been a detective for too long to ignore this many coincidences lining up in a row. During my lunch break, I casually called Janet, the HOA secretary. Janet had always been friendly, and she'd been happy when I'd submitted my garage sale application properly, unlike some people who just did whatever they wanted. "Janet, hey. It's your neighbor from Oakwood Drive. Got a question about the HOA if you have a minute." "Of course. And I heard about Saturday. I'm so sorry Patricia gave you trouble. I sent you that approval email myself." "Yeah, about that. Has she been doing this to other people?" "The aggressive violation complaints?" Janet was quiet for a moment. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but since you're asking, yes, it's been getting worse over the past year. She's been finding violations for things that were never problems before. Last month she tried to fine the Hendersons because their mailbox was the wrong shade of black. I'm not even kidding. She said it was off black instead of true black. That's insane." "I know. And the weird thing is, It always seems to be the same few houses she targets. She'll ignore actual violations from her friends, but if she's decided she doesn't like someone, she'll find something to complain about. Have any of those people ended up selling their houses? Another pause. Now that you mention it, yes. The Kowalskis sold last fall after Patricia kept citing them for their dog barking, and the Patels sold in the spring after she went after them about their vegetable garden. She said it made the neighborhood look agricultural. Agricultural, I repeated flatly. I know. It was 3 tomato plants. After I hung up with Janet, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen. I had enough for a pattern now. Not enough for charges or anything official, but enough to know something shady was happening. Patricia was weaponizing the HOA to create problems for specific homeowners. Those homeowners would get frustrated and decide to sell. Patricia's sister would swoop in, list the house, maybe even have buyers ready. The house would sell quickly and below market value because of all the problem neighbor documentation. Then it would get flipped and resold for a profit. It was actually pretty clever. Completely unethical and probably illegal, but clever. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I couldn't just launch an official investigation based on a hunch about my annoying neighbor. I'd need evidence. Real evidence. The kind that would hold up if this ever went to court. I pulled up Patricia's information on my computer. Her sister Brenda's real estate license. Property records. HOA meeting minutes going back 3 years. I started building a timeline, connecting dates and events, and then I had an idea. If Patricia was really running this scheme, she wouldn't be able to resist an easy target. Someone who looked frustrated with the neighborhood. Someone who might be ready to sell. Someone like me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just confront Patricia without solid proof. People like her always had excuses ready. She'd say the violations were legitimate, that her sister's involvement was coincidental, that I was abusing my position to harass an innocent volunteer. I'd seen it 100 times in interrogations. The best way to catch someone running a scheme is to let them think they're winning. So I decided to give Patricia exactly what she wanted. A target. That Wednesday, I made sure to run into Tom while getting my mail. Tom was the kind of guy who talked to everyone, which made him perfect for spreading information around the neighborhood. "Hey, Tom, you got a minute?" I called out. He walked over curious. "What's up?" I made a show of looking frustrated. "I'm thinking about selling the house. Moving somewhere quieter, you know? Maybe outside the city. This whole HOA drama with Patricia has me wondering if it's worth the headache anymore." Tom's eyes went wide. "Really? You'd leave? You've been here forever. 20 years is a long time. Maybe it's time for a change." I shrugged like I'd been thinking about this for a while. Plus, I'm tired of dealing with power-hungry HOA presidents. Life's too short. "Can't say I blame you," Tom said. "Linda and I have talked about it too. But man, it won't be the same without you here." I patted him on the shoulder. "Nothing's decided yet. Just thinking out loud." I knew Tom would mention it to Linda, and Linda would mention it to her book club, and by Friday the whole neighborhood would know, including Patricia. Sure enough, 3 days later I found a notice tucked into my front door. Official HOA letterhead. Apparently my grass was a 1/4 inch too tall. Violation number 1. Fine, $25. I smiled and took a picture of it. Then I took pictures of my perfectly normal grass, and pictures of at least 4 other lawns on the street that were noticeably taller than mine, including Patricia's own lawn. 2 days after that, another notice. My garbage cans were visible from the street at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Never mind that I'd been at work and had no idea the garbage truck had come early. Another $25 fine. A week later, I got a formal letter saying my mailbox was damaged and needed to be replaced within 14 days or face a $100 fine. I went outside and examined my mailbox. There was a tiny scratch on one side, barely visible. The kind of thing that happens when you've had the same mailbox for 15 years. I documented everything. Photos, timestamps, copies of every notice. I also started documenting other people's violations that Patricia was ignoring. The house 3 doors down had a broken fence panel that had been there for months. No notice. Patricia's friend across the street had a boat parked in her driveway, which was technically against the rules. No notice, but me? I was suddenly the neighborhood's biggest rule breaker. I didn't pay any of the fines. I wanted to see how far she'd push it. Instead, I filed formal disputes for each one, which I knew would drive her crazy. Each dispute required her to provide photo evidence and document the violation properly. More paperwork, more time, more chances for her to make mistakes. At work, I had one of my most trusted detectives, a sharp woman named Reynolds who'd been with the department for 12 years, start looking into Patricia's finances, quietly, carefully, all above board with proper channels. "What am I looking for exactly?" Reynolds asked. "HOA financial records. See if there's anything unusual. Money going places it shouldn't. Also, pull up everything you can find on her sister's real estate transactions in our neighborhood." Reynolds was good at her job. She didn't ask why I was interested in my HOA president. She just nodded and got to work. 2 weeks into my little experiment, I held another garage sale. This time I made sure everyone knew about it. Posted it on the neighborhood Facebook group, put up signs at the entrance to our subdivision, even mentioned it to the mailman. The reaction was immediate. The morning of the sale, I woke up to find an official cease and desist letter taped to my garage door. It claimed I was operating a habitual business out of my home, which violated zoning laws and HOA regulations. It threatened legal action if I proceeded with the sale. I held it anyway. And this time, Patricia didn't just show up alone. She brought 2 other HOA board members with her. I recognized them from neighborhood meetings. They both looked uncomfortable, like they didn't really want to be there but didn't know how to say no to Patricia. Patricia planted herself at the end of my driveway again, arms crossed. "This is your final warning. You are in direct violation of multiple HOA bylaws. If you don't shut this down immediately, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action and place a lien on your property." The 2 board members behind her nodded weakly. I walked over calmly. "Patricia, I have every right to sell my own belongings. You know that. I know that. Everyone here knows that. You had a garage sale 3 weeks ago. Now you're having another one. That establishes a pattern of commercial activity. Or it establishes a pattern of me cleaning out my house before I move," I said, making sure my voice carried to the gathered neighbors who were watching this unfold. Her eyes lit up. "You're moving?" "Thinking about it. Hard to enjoy a neighborhood when you're being harassed constantly." I gestured at the letter still in my hand. "This is the 7th violation notice I've gotten in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, there are actual violations all over this street that you're completely ignoring." One of the board members, an older guy named Clark, spoke up quietly. 7 notices in 3 weeks does seem excessive, Patricia." Patricia whirled on him. "Are you questioning my judgment? As board members, you're supposed to support my decisions." "We're supposed to be fair," Clark said, finding his spine. "I've lived here 8 years and I've never gotten a single violation." "He's been here 20 years and suddenly he's getting them weekly." "That's because he suddenly decided the rules don't apply to him," Patricia snapped. "No," I said calmly. "It's because I'm thinking about selling my house and you want to create documentation of a problem neighbor so your sister can list it cheap." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. The 2 board members looked at each other in confusion. That's slander," Patricia sputtered. "My sister has nothing to do with HOA business." "Really?" "Because I've been doing some research. 6 houses on this street have sold in the past 2 years. 3 of them were listed by your sister. All 3 of those homeowners received unusual amounts of HOA violations before they listed. All 3 sold below market value. That's one heck of a coincidence." "You're making wild accusations because you're upset about legitimate violations," Patricia said, but her voice wasn't quite as steady as before. "Am I? Let's talk about legitimate violations then. Your grass is taller than mine. No violation notice. The Johnsons have had a broken fence for 4 months. No violation notice. Your friend Dana has had a boat in her driveway since March, which directly violates Section 8 of the bylaws. No violation notice. But my mailbox has a scratch, so that's a $100 fine?" Clark was looking at Patricia differently now. "Is this true? Are you targeting certain homeowners?" "I'm enforcing the rules as I see fit," Patricia said stiffly. "Different violations have different priority levels." "That's not what the bylaws say," I countered. "The bylaws say all violations should be addressed equally and fairly. You're not enforcing rules. You're harassing people you want to push out so your sister can profit." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Mr. Peterson was there, Greg and his wife, Tom and Linda, even some people from other streets who'd come for the garage sale. They were all listening. Patricia looked around at the audience and seemed to realize she was losing control of the situation. This is ridiculous. I don't have to stand here and defend myself to someone who clearly has a vendetta against me. The violations stand. Pay your fines or face the consequences. She turned to leave, but I wasn't done yet. One more thing, Patricia. I've also been looking at HOA financial records. Public records, all legal. And I've noticed some interesting discrepancies. Money allocated for neighborhood improvements that never happened. Payments to vendors that don't seem to exist. Small amounts, but they add up over time. She froze. For just a second, I saw real fear flash across her face before she masked it with anger. You have no right to investigate HOA finances. Actually, as a homeowner in this HOA, I have every right to review how my dues are being spent. It's all in the bylaws. Section 22. Patricia's hand was shaking slightly as she pointed at me. You're going to regret this. All of this. She stormed off, her two board members hurrying after her. Clark looked back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe, or curiosity. After they left, Mr. Peterson walked up to me. That was something. Did you mean all that about the financial stuff? I nodded slowly. Still looking into it, but yeah. Something's not right. Good, he said firmly. Because that woman has been running this neighborhood like her personal kingdom for too long. The garage sale continued, but my mind was already 3 steps ahead. I'd rattled Patricia's cage. Now I just had to wait and see what she'd do next. In my experience, people who are running schemes make their biggest mistakes when they feel cornered. And Patricia was definitely feeling cornered. I didn't have to wait long for Patricia to make her next move. 3 days after our public confrontation, I got a certified letter from a lawyer. Patricia was suing me personally for harassment, defamation, and interference with HOA business. She was asking for $50,000 in damages and a court order, forcing me to stop spreading false information about her. I read the letter twice, then called my own lawyer, a guy named Rick who specialized in civil cases. We'd worked together before when citizens sued the department. He was sharp and didn't scare easily. She's trying to intimidate you, Rick said after reviewing the complaint. This lawsuit has no legs. Everything you said was either provably true or clearly stated as suspicion based on public records. That's not defamation, so I should ignore it? No, we'll respond properly. But honestly, this looks desperate. People who file frivolous lawsuits like this are usually trying to shut someone up because they're worried about what else might come out. That got me thinking. If Patricia was worried enough to sue me, what else was she trying to hide? I'd found the financial discrepancies, but I hadn't dug deep enough yet. Maybe it was time to turn up the heat. Reynolds came to my office the next morning with a folder full of documents. She looked excited, which meant she'd found something good. Okay, so I went through 3 years of HOA financial records like you asked, she said, spreading papers across my desk. At first glance, everything looks fine. Dues coming in, expenses going out, normal stuff. But then I started looking at the vendors, and some of them don't exist. Well, they exist on paper, but they're not real companies. I found at least 4 that are just P.O. boxes with no actual business address, no website, no phone number that works. She pulled out a highlighted spreadsheet. Total payments to these fake vendors over 3 years? Just over $50,000. I let out a low whistle. $50,000 was more than I'd expected. Let me guess. Patricia approves all vendor payments? As HOA president, she signs off on everything. The treasurer technically reviews it. But the treasurer is Beverly Chen, who happens to be Patricia's sister-in-law, married to Patricia's brother. Family operation, I muttered. What about the real estate angle? Reynolds flipped to another section. That's where it gets really interesting. Patricia's sister Brenda didn't just list those 3 houses. She bought 2 of them herself through an LLC, held them for 6 months. He did minimal improvements, then resold them for an average profit of $80,000 per house. So Patricia creates problems. Homeowners get frustrated and sell cheap. Sister buys low and sells high. Classic flip scheme. Except usually people flipping houses aren't manufacturing the reasons for the low prices through harassment and extortion, Reynolds added. That's where this crosses into criminal territory. I leaned back in my chair. We need more. I need to catch them in the act, not just show a pattern. If we go after them now with what we have, they'll lawyer up and claim it's all coincidence. So what's the plan? I smiled. I'm going to sell my house, or at least I'm going to make them think I am. Over the next week, I played my part perfectly. I called a different real estate agent and had them come out to do a valuation. Made sure Patricia saw the agent taking photos of my house. I started packing boxes in my garage with the door open. Told everyone who asked that I was tired of the HOA drama and ready to move on. And then I waited. It took less than 48 hours. I was loading boxes into my car when a silver Mercedes pulled up in front of my house. Out stepped a woman in her 50s wearing a designer suit and carrying a leather portfolio. She had Patricia's same sharp features and the same aggressive energy. "Excuse me," she called out, walking up my driveway with practiced confidence. "I'm Brenda Chen with Prestige Realty. I heard you might be thinking about selling your home." I put on my best tired homeowner face. "Word travels fast around here." "Small neighborhood," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I actually specialize in this area. I've sold several homes on this very street. I'd love to offer you a free market analysis and discuss how I could help you get the best price." "Already talked to someone else," I said. "Got an agent coming back with an offer strategy next week." Her smile tightened. "Well, before you commit to anyone, let me just say that I have buyers specifically looking in this neighborhood right now. Serious buyers with cash. I could potentially have your house sold within 2 weeks. No waiting, no uncertainty. 2 weeks? That's fast. When you have the right connections, things move quickly." She pulled out a business card and a packet of papers. "I took the liberty of running some comps for your property. Based on recent sales and current market conditions, I think we could list at $420,000 and expect offers in the low 400s. I knew my house was worth at least $475, maybe $480 in the current market." She was lowballing by $75,000. "That seems low," I said carefully. "I was thinking more like $460, $470. Brenda's expression turned sympathetic. "I understand you'd want to get top dollar, but I have to be honest with you. The HOA situation here isn't great. Potential buyers see all the violations and complaints on record, and it makes them nervous. They start thinking the neighborhood has problems. That affects value." "Violations? You mean the bogus ones your sister made up?" Her face went blank for half a second. "I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm just telling you what buyers see when they do their research. Properties with extensive HOA violation histories typically sell below market value. That's just reality. Convenient reality for someone who wants to buy houses cheap and flip them," I said evenly. Brenda's professional mask slipped. "I don't appreciate what you're implying. My sister's HOA work and my real estate business are completely separate." "Are they? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you two have a nice system going. She creates problems. Homeowners want out. You show up with lowball offers and cash buyers who are probably you in disguise." She took a step back. "You're making serious accusations without any proof. I'm a licensed real estate agent with an impeccable reputation. I could sue you for slander." "Your sister already beat you to it," I said. $50,000 lawsuit. Though I'm guessing that's not going to go very well for her once discovery starts and I can subpoena all your business records." Brenda's jaw clenched. "I came here to offer you a professional service. Instead, you're attacking my character based on paranoid conspiracy theories. I can see why you're having problems with the HOA. You seem like a very difficult person." "Difficult," I repeated. "That's interesting. Is that what you tell yourself when you're taking advantage of people? That they're difficult so they deserve it? I don't have to listen to this." She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at me. "You know what? I hope you do try to sell for $470. I hope you sit on the market for months with no offers because everyone who looks at this property sees what a nightmare this neighborhood has become. Maybe then you'll realize you should have taken a good offer when you had the chance." She stalked back to her Mercedes and drove off. I watched her go, then pulled out my phone. The conversation had been recorded on the device in my shirt pocket. Not admissible in court since she hadn't been informed, but useful for building my case and knowing exactly what she'd said. I called Reynolds. "I just got the sister on record essentially admitting they use HOA violations to tank property values. She practically described their whole scheme while trying to get me to list low." "That's good, but it's still not quite enough," Reynolds said. "We need them to do something actively criminal, something we can arrest them for, not just sue them over." She was right. What I really needed was to catch them creating a fake violation or fabricating evidence, or better yet, catch them in the act of embezzling HOA funds. That evening, I got an email from Janet, the HOA secretary. The subject line read, "You need to see this." The email had an attachment, A scanned document showing a payment authorization for $5,000 to a landscaping company for community entrance improvements. It was signed by Patricia and countersigned by Beverly, the treasurer. Janet's message said, "This payment was authorized last week, but we haven't done any entrance improvements. I drove by this morning and nothing's changed." The landscaping company listed is one I've never heard of. I thought you should know. I looked up the landscaping company. Just like the other vendors Reynolds had found, it was a shell company. P.O. box, no real address, no actual business operations. But this time, Patricia had made a mistake. She'd authorized the payment after I'd started asking questions, after she knew I was looking at HOA finances. That showed consciousness of guilt. More importantly, it meant she was actively embezzling money right now, not just defending old crimes. I forwarded everything to Reynolds with a note. Time to get a warrant. The next morning, I took a personal day and made some calls. Within 2 hours, I had a judge sign off on a warrant to search HOA financial records and Patricia's personal banking information. We had probable cause based on the fake vendors, the recent fraudulent payment, and the pattern of behavior. But I didn't want to just catch Patricia for embezzlement. I wanted to catch her in the bigger scheme. So I made one more play. I posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, "Big garage sale this Saturday. Everything must go. Moving out of state by end of month. All reasonable offers accepted." Then I sat back and waited for Patricia to take the bait one final time. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, ideal for a garage sale. I'd set up my tables earlier than usual, around 6:30, and positioned everything carefully. What my neighbors couldn't see was the small camera I'd mounted in my garage, angled to capture my entire driveway and the street. Reynolds was parked 2 blocks away in an unmarked car, watching a live feed on her laptop. By 7, people started showing up. Real buyers this time, not just nosy neighbors. I'd priced everything to move fast because I wanted this to look legitimate. Someone bought my old couch for $50. A young couple grabbed all my kitchen stuff. Mr. Peterson came by again and picked up some tools. Around 8:15, I saw what I'd been waiting for. A white contractor van pulled up across the street. The side had a magnetic sign that read Precision Home Inspections. A man got out wearing a polo shirt with the same company name embroidered on it. He had a clipboard and what looked like an official tablet. But I recognized him. I'd seen his photo in the property records. This was Kevin Chen, Patricia's brother. The same Kevin whose wife Beverly was the HOA treasurer. He wasn't a home inspector. He was an insurance adjuster. Kevin walked straight up to my driveway, putting on a professional smile. "Good morning. Are you the homeowner?" "I am," I said, playing along. "Kevin from Precision Home Inspections. I'm here to do a courtesy inspection of your property. The HOA has received some concerns about potential code violations and structural issues. This is just a routine check. Won't take more than 20 minutes, I raised my eyebrows. I didn't request an inspection. And the HOA has never done random inspections before. New policy, Kevin said smoothly. Part of the HOA's effort to maintain property values throughout the neighborhood. Nothing to worry about. I just need to check a few things, take some photos for the record. You need my permission to inspect my property, I pointed out. Well, technically, according to the revised HOA bylaws, the board has the right to conduct inspections if there's reasonable suspicion of violations that might affect the community. He was making that up. I'd read every version of our bylaws going back 10 years. Show me that in writing, I said. Kevin's smile got tighter. I can have Patricia send you the documentation, but I'm already here. It'll be easier for everyone if we just get this done quickly. Unless you have something to hide. There it was. The classic pressure tactic. Make it seem like refusing was suspicious. Tell you what, I said. Let me see your inspection license and insurance, and then we can talk about it. My credentials are with the HOA, Kevin said, which meant he didn't have any. Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave my property. Kevin's professional mask cracked. You're making a big mistake. The HOA has the authority to fine you for refusing a legitimate inspection. We're talking serious money here. I'll take my chances, I said calmly. Kevin stood there for a moment, clearly trying to decide what to do next. Then his phone rang. He answered it, walking a few steps away, but I could hear Patricia's voice through the phone, sharp and angry. Kevin's responses were quiet yeses and nos. He hung up and turned back to me. Fine, have it your way. but you'll be receiving a formal violation notice for refusing HOA inspection. $500 fine. Looking forward to it, I said. Kevin walked back to his van and I watched him drive away. I pulled out my phone and texted Reynolds. Got the fake inspector on camera. Phase 1 complete. Her response came immediately. Phase 2 in motion. What Kevin and Patricia didn't know was that while Kevin was at my house, Reynolds and 2 other detectives were executing the search warrant at Patricia's home. We'd coordinated the timing perfectly. While Patricia was distracted with her scheme against me, we were going through her financial records. I continued my garage sale like nothing had happened. More neighbors stopped by. A few asked about the inspection van, and I told them it was just more HOA harassment. The sympathy I got was genuine. Patricia had made herself so unpopular that most people were happy to see someone finally pushing back. Around noon, just as I was packing up the last few unsold items, Patricia's Mercedes came screeching down the street. She parked halfway on my lawn and jumped out, her face red with fury. "You son of a..." She caught herself, looked around at the neighbors watching, and lowered her voice to a hiss. "You sent police to my house. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I executed a legal search warrant based on evidence of embezzlement and fraud," I said evenly. "That's my job. This is harassment. This is an abuse of power. I'm calling the mayor, the city council, everyone. You'll be fired for this." "Go ahead," I said. "I've got 3 years of documentation showing you've been stealing from the HOA and running a scheme with your sister to defraud homeowners. You want to make this public? Be my guest." Patricia looked around wildly, realizing we had an audience. Mr. Peterson was on his porch. Tom and Linda were in their yard. Greg and his wife were watching from their window. At least a dozen people were seeing this unfold. "You can't prove anything," Patricia said, but her voice shook. "I can prove you created fake vendor companies and paid them over $50,000 of HOA money over 3 years. I can prove your sister bought houses at artificially low prices after you harassed the owners with bogus violations. I can prove your brother just tried to conduct a fake inspection on my property to create documentation for more violations." I pulled out my phone and showed her the camera footage. "I've got him on video impersonating a home inspector, which is illegal in this state, by the way." The color drained from Patricia's face. "Kevin was just trying to help maintain property values. Kevin was helping you commit fraud. So was your sister. So was your sister-in-law, the treasurer. This was a family operation, and it's over." 2 police cruisers pulled up to the curb. Reynolds got out of one, along with Officers Wilson and his partner. They walked up with that deliberate calm that cops have when they're about to make an arrest. "Patricia Whitmore," Reynolds said formally. Patricia looked at me with pure hatred. "You're destroying my life over a few HOA complaints." "This is insane." "You stole $50,000, I said. You extorted families into selling their homes below value so your sister could profit. You created fake violations, filed false reports, and used your position to run a criminal enterprise. This isn't about HOA complaints. This is about fraud, embezzlement, and corruption." Reynolds stepped forward with handcuffs. "Patricia Whitmore, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As Reynolds read Patricia her rights, another unit pulled up and officers went to get Beverly from her house 2 streets over. I'd already called Brenda's office and she was being picked up there. Kevin had been stopped on his way home and was being brought in for questioning about the fake inspection business. The whole neighborhood came out to watch. Some people looked shocked. Others looked satisfied, like they'd been waiting for this moment. Mr. Peterson actually started clapping, and a few others joined in. Patricia was loaded into the police car, still sputtering about lawsuits and abuse of power. As the cruiser drove away, Clark, the HOA board member who'd stood up to Patricia at my last garage sale, walked over. "Is it really all true?" he asked. "Everything you said?" "Every word. The full investigation will take a few months, but we've got enough evidence to make the charges stick. Your HOA dues were being stolen and several families were scammed into selling their homes." Clark shook his head in disbelief. "I knew she was difficult, but I never thought..." "What happens now? With the HOA, you'll need to elect a new president. Review all the finances with a forensic accountant. Probably invalidate most of the violations Patricia issued over the past few years." I shrugged. "It'll be messy for a while, but you'll get through it. Would you consider being president?" Clark asked. I think after all this, people would trust you. I laughed. I didn't do all this just to end up running the HOA, but I'll help however I can. Over the next few weeks, the case came together beautifully. Patricia, Beverly, Brenda, and Kevin all ended up facing charges. The fake vendors were traced back to accounts controlled by Patricia and Beverly. Brenda's LLC purchases were clearly connected to Patricia's violation campaigns. Kevin had been conducting fake inspections for months, creating false reports that Patricia used to justify fines and threats. In the end, Patricia took a plea deal. 3 years in prison, full restitution to the HOA and affected homeowners, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board. Beverly got 2 years. Brenda lost her real estate license and got 18 months. Kevin got probation and a hefty fine for the fake inspection business. The neighborhood threw a block party to celebrate the HOA's liberation from Patricia's reign. They elected Clark as the new president, and he actually turned out to be good at it. Fair, reasonable, focused on community instead of control. As for me, I decided not to move after all. I'd put down roots here, made friends, built a life, and now without Patricia's constant harassment, it was actually a pretty nice place to live. I never did have another garage sale, though. Turned out I didn't need to get rid of that much stuff after all. Besides, I'd had enough excitement with garage sales to last me a lifetime. Sometimes on quiet Saturday mornings, I sit on my front porch with my coffee and think about how differently things could have gone. If I hadn't been a detective, if I hadn't known how to investigate, if I hadn't had the resources to fight back, how many other people had Patricia and her family scammed over the years? But I did fight back, and sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to stand up to a bully, document the evidence, and make sure justice gets served. Even if that bully is your HOA president. The best part? My grass is still a 1/4 inch too long by Patricia's old standards, and nobody cares.